Gravelord is about as pure an example of Quake-like as it gets. Developed by Fatbot Games, this boomer shooter takes the classic mechanics of Quake and infuses them with a novel tarot card upgrade system, striving for a brutally fun FPS experience that both celebrates the genre's heritage while also defining its own quirky personality.
That one looked like me dad, it did.
After being in early access for a little over a year, Gravelord just released into 1.0, bringing with it 20 levels spread across 3 episodes, as well as a map editor so players can build and share their own maps. Fatbot Games was kind enough to share the build with me early, a big thank you to them, and after putting it through its paces, I'm going to let you know my thoughts and whether this old school Splatfest is worth your time and money. So with that, let's grab our shovels and start digging.
And that's what you get when you don't pay burial allowance. I'm just a simple guy from Storham. Always wake up early in the morning and do my lovely job like my daddy and his daddy used to do.
In Gravelord, you inhabit the dirty, stinking boots of Quito, a graveyard keeper from a long line of graveyard keepers who is struggling to keep the family business afloat as his clients won't stay dead.
Did I not bury you already? Bloody Kieran Husk and his anti-death movement, making a profit from the pathetic losers as fear of dying.
And so, taking up the family's Uber shovel, Quito sets out to stop the anti-death movement and send his clients back to the grave, all while spouting a bunch of cringy one-liners.
Do I love me job? Of course.
One too many cringy one-liners.
I see dead people.
Okay, enough.
Does that thing fly? Does it fly?
Enough! Now, I described Gravelord as a Quake-like, and that's because it uses the tried-and-true formula of id Software's foundational classic. Fast movement, thunderous old-school shooting, lots of enemies, lots of gibs, and monolithic maze-like levels, littered with keys to progress. It's a well-worn playbook, but one that Fatbot has executed beautifully. Mechanically, Gravelord leaves very little to complain about. The movement is tight and effortless, the shooting rock solid and satisfying, with an arsenal that is more than familiar, but works as hoped and then some, like an explosive shotgun, punchy minigun, nasty grenade launcher, and a few specialized implements. A magical staff adorned with a rotting head that freezes enemies, a surgical hunting rifle, and what's basically the Wolfenstein Tesla gun. The combat is let down a tad by some overly spongy enemies that have minor damage reactions. However, most of the time you won't even notice, as enemy pressure and a barrage of projectiles will force you to stay on the move constantly, head a swivel. It's fun. I found it easy to get into that retro shooter flow state of hopping and gliding through levels and splatting enemies off instinct. And the bow on top is the steep challenge along with superb level design. I'm going to delve deeper into those two things later on, but first I need to touch on a couple aspects Fatbot introduced that may not revolutionize Gravelord's classic FPS formula, but I think brings some appreciated depth. The first is the tarot card system. Throughout each level, you can collect up to 3 tarot cards slotted into 3 tiers. Tier 1 cards are fairly straightforward, like regenerating your health up to 40 when not in combat, having defeated enemies drop ammo shards, or lighting them on fire when attacked. Tier 2 and 3 cards are more powerful and elaborate, like your damage doubling when attacking in the air, using your health as ammo when the bullets run dry, having enemies drop health when jibbed, or summoning a friendly rat familiar to fight alongside you, who I totally thought was an enemy at first. Ooh, sorry about that, buddy. These cards stay equipped until you find a new one, at which point you have the option to swap out for a new card or keep what you have. It lends some decent customization for your build and whiffs a bit like a roguelite. Your melee weapon, the shovel, is also a focal point of the cards, as they can lend it a slew of alternate attacks. These are things like doing an AoE slam that can jib foes, spiking the shovel in the ground so it can electrocute enemies, and my favorite, marking them so their buddies attack them instead. And what I really loved was when I could get the cards to complement each other. For instance, there's a tier 1 card that makes it so shovel attacks heal you by 25% of the damage they deal. And when coupled with one of my shovel alternates, like the electrocuting one, it becomes a secondary healing system. I like this system. The effect of the cards is acutely felt in gameplay, and I loved experimenting with different combinations of them. And at the same time, I appreciate that the taros weren't too powerful, that they didn't become a crutch. Also, the artwork for them is fantastic. I gotta touch on the weapon alternate fires, as I really dig how Fatbot implemented them. All weapons have alternate fires that are collected throughout the episodes, and all of them lend a marked advantage over the deficiencies of the standard fires. A clear example is the pistol. While accurate, it's not all that powerful and shoots pretty slow. Its alternate, though, is a 3-round burst, a clear advantage over the slow fire rate that can take out most low-level enemies. The grenade launcher is another clear benefit. While powerful, the arc of it can make distant or high-up enemies difficult to hit. The alternate, however, shoots 3 rockets in a straight line, solving the accuracy problem, and powerful enough to wipe out some of the stronger enemy types in one strike.
Should've stuck to pulling a sleigh.
My favorite, though, is the head on the stick, the soul shooter. The regular attack slows enemies down by freezing them and will eventually dispatch them. Problem is, it can be slow and kind of clunky. The alternate, though, will cause any frozen enemies to explode, even the most powerful ones, making it one of the most useful weapons in the game. Truly, every alternate was useful and fun. Nothing is wasted in this arsenal. And a nice touch is that the alternates are on an overarching cooldown timer, meaning you can't use an alternate on one gun and swap to another and use it. You have to wait for that cooldown, which would have been fun, but I get the developer was trying to preserve the challenge. Although there is a tarot card that cuts the cooldown timer in half. Ho ho ho. The cooldown also extends to your shovel alternates, again so you can't game things too much, like electrocuting, healing, and rocketing at the same time. Some good thought went into the balance here. A surprisingly fascinating aspect of the game was the collectible traversal power-ups, the double jump boots and the spectral shovel. You collect these in just about every level and have to recollect them in just about every level. They don't carry over. The double jump boots are self-explanatory. Been there, done that. The spectral shovel, though, is some cool stuff. This allows you to zip to blue crystal walls, with no limit on the range, making it so you can fly across levels. Even cooler, though, you can damage and jib enemies with it, turning you into a human railgun. And you best believe this is incorporated in the combat arenas, which is a lot of fun. What was interesting, though, is how Fatbot took full advantage of these abilities in the level design. In many of the maps, you'll find yourself battling through the twisty turning pathways, come across the spectral shovel, and then realize you can get to additional pathways layered on top of the ones you just went through, often leading to the critical path, and of course secrets. Same with the double jump boots, they allow you to reach whole new areas. In a sense, both these abilities serve as a secondary key system, especially since, again, you have to recollect them every map. It's similar to that sensation you get from a Metroidvania, when you earn a new ability and discover a whole new pathway with it in a previously explored area. Gravelord has tiny hits of that all throughout it, and for me it was an unexpected and welcome surprise. This makes for a good excuse to zip into the level design, which I thought was fantastic. By and large, Gravelord's maps exemplify the strengths of old-school arena shooters, with courses that succeed in keeping a consistent speedy flow for the player, often looping back on each other to mitigate backtracking, and combat arenas serving as the main centerpieces. Again, it's the Quake playbook, but played well and with little confusion. No matter how complex some maps got, it was always clear where I needed to go, with just enough signposting so I didn't feel my hand was being held. What I really loved, though, was how playful the maps felt, often full of surprises. Sure, there were times I would go into an open area, full of ammo, with a single switch in it, and go, oh gee, I sure hope an ambush isn't coming.
Yeehaw!
But more often than not, ambushes came totally out of nowhere, where I was suddenly locked in a room and whisked to another part of the level, or had the floor drop out from under me, or found myself in an arena that was actually an elevator, moving down like the Haunted Mansion at Disney. It made the experience feel unpredictable and kept boredom far, far away. And visually, these maps are well rendered. When I was thinking about the graphics, the phrase that kept rattling in my head was comic book Quake, as everything had thick black lines around it, giving things a pseudo-cel-shaded look, complementing the game's hand-drawn cutscenes and tarot cards, but also helping to make everything look clean, distinct, and readable. Even the blood splatter looks hand-drawn. The textures are detailed and sharp, the lighting is decent, and enemy models are solid with a clear personality in each. Each episode sticks with a distinct set of assets used in each level. Episode 1, for instance, is Dark Gothic Cathedral, whereas Episode 2 is Ancient Mayan Ruins, with the lighting used to make each map feel distinct from each other. Which does work for the most part, but there are times when things can feel a little samey. Also, I wish there was more in the art direction to personify Gravelord's world. While the maps look good, they also look like they could have been pulled from the original Unreal titles and Quake, which was probably the point, but I can't help but feel like I've seen this stuff too many times before, and I wish there was stuff that felt more unique to Gravelord's universe, especially since the game tries to flesh out some of its lore through collectible comic books, which are awesome, by the way. Those things, however, I would slot into the nitpick category, but it is something I would like the devs to think about if they decide to make some sort of follow-up to Gravelord. The last thing I'll touch on is one of Gravelord's best features. Its challenge. My playthrough of this game was defined by my screen blaring red from being inches from death and having to be scrappy to survive. I also immediately jumped in on hard, as I often do with these types of games, which naturally made it all the more spicy. This isn't me complaining though. In fact, the difficulty is what made the game a hell of a good time for me. Gravelord hits hard, but also gives you the means to hit hard back. It's a gradual rising of temperature. Early levels will be manageable for most to get the basics down, but by the end of Episode 1, the game will start backhanding you to the game over screen with a quickness. And that sting carries over and then some into Episode 2, where things get pretty overwhelming with almost constant enemy spawns and in fiendish combinations, putting a lot of pressure on me to flex my reflexes, stay mobile, be mindful of what weapon I was using, and most of all, which targets I needed to focus on first. This game expects you to perform in a way an old-school shooter should, and it really highlighted how good some of the level design was with how I needed to use it to get protection from enemies, but also how it was used against me. It was fun and rewarding, for the most part. There were some moments of spamming my quick saves and quick loads to trial and error myself through some pickles. And there were some late game arenas that were irritatingly unfair, coupling enemies that could hold me in place with ones that could hit scan and others that could jostle my camera when they struck, lending a feeling akin to being stuck in a bear trap while getting slapped in the face and pelted by a paintball gun. However, irritatingly cheap moments like that were in the minority. Most of my deaths felt like they happened because I wasn't playing well enough, which is the sweet spot of difficulty, and success was always in my power so long as I stayed aggressive and used my tools. One enemy I think exemplifies this point is the floating beholder-looking baddie. These guys suck. Upon sight of you, they can rapidly drain your health, and can teleport around the arena, easily getting the drop on you. Most of my deaths were tied to these guys being a part of the mob, and while their attack power could maybe be toned down a bit, it only takes a few grenades to off them, and certain weapons, like the minigun, can briefly stun them. They were dangerous, but I could manage them as long as I stayed aggressive and used my tools. On the flip side though, there's a few enemies I think could use some tweaks as they aren't really helping the challenge. The double sickle fiends that jump at you I think take way too much damage to the point of annoyance, and I don't see why they need to be so spongy. And there are these horned demon charger types, Gravelord's version of the Pinky Demon I think, that don't do a thing for the game. They soak up a ton of damage, are easy to stay away from, are boring to fight, and in some levels have some pretty bugged pathfinding. But putting those quick notes aside, Gravelord brought the action and smackdown I crave from these sorts of titles, and it was fun being tested by it.
Burn, baby, burn!
Overall, I had a great time with Gravelord. It checked most of my boxes for a fun old-school shooter. While at its core, it's a fairly standard Quake-like, something an avid retro shooter fan has played many, many times in some form or another. It is sharply designed, well thought out, is decent to look at, and the tarot system and traversal power-ups bring some appreciated depth. It's an easy recommend for me. If you're someone who can't get enough of this type of shooter and have a mean Quake itch you need scratched, then you are going to love this. What are your thoughts on Gravelord? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share. It's a huge help for the algorithm. Thank you for watching, and stay safe out there.